All right, everyone. Welcome back to Beneath the Helmet, Season 3. Another fantastic person on the show today who's going to share their wisdom nuggets from their life and history of going through the challenges of life and trauma. And I think that's one of the key elements we talk about on this podcast is mental health, physical health, spiritual health. And today's guest is going to definitely share some insight into how we can be a better first responder. I'm your host, Arjuna George, former fire chief turned executive coach, author, and podcaster.
It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired Fire Chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
So we're going to meet today with a combat vet. He's also a trauma therapist, and he's also the creator of this system called the Nervous System Recalibration. And he's also an educator. He's an author. Today I got a chance to sit down with Doug Allen. So welcome to the show, Doug Allen.
It's great to be here.
Awesome. So tell our listener a little bit, just a little recap of kind of who you are and what brought you to becoming a trauma therapist after being a combat vet.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, quite honestly, but it just kind of how it went. And I mean, I grew up as what I call a piglet. So I grew up as the son of a police officer, a career police officer, and right around Cornwallis, which was the training base for Canada for military for many years. So I was immersed in service growing up. I didn't know anything else. I knew from the age of 12 that I was going to be in service of some sort. Really knew I was going to go infantry because that seemed to be my passion for sure. And I followed that passion, and I was guided. I think my whole life, my lens in life was guided by service through my father, and paramedicine and all these other areas, firefighting, which are in the military itself. So all of these influences sort of, that's the window that I saw life through, which is definitely good. And it's good and bad points, as you can imagine. But I think quite fondly of it. I think it prepared me for a lot of things, and also led to some transition in my own life and trying to figure out who I was outside of that lens, which was a challenge for me in my mid-30s. But yeah, I joined the military. I loved it. I did exactly what I wanted to do. Get to go around the world and see people that were in need. What I thought I was going to be doing, which was like all the hardcore military, war movie stuff, really wasn't the case necessarily. I mean, I did end up doing that, but ultimately it was really what was struck me early on, in particular in Bosnia, was the connection, the human connection, and meeting people at their worst and seeing them as human, and having the power through my representation and representing the country. I can actually do something to help someone. And maybe what I often talk about too in group therapy is we're often the people that see them even when their own country doesn't. It's a very powerful thing. And I was able to do that. And then serving in a combat role in Afghanistan and taking a leadership role in that campaign with my troops. And then getting to sort of see it from a different lens again, is looking down at these young soldiers, like 18, 20, and watching these young people do incredible things that I had not done at that age, for sure. And I was just in awe. And so when I came back, I was in a leadership position, took over as a platoon warden. And I really wanted to know these soldiers as humans, more so from being impacted by their skill sets in such trying conditions. So I started to really pay attention to who they were as people and recognized that a lot of them needed some help. It wasn't good enough just to follow the training manual and to carry on with the day's mission. Some of them needed to stop and check in with themselves so that they could save themselves and save their families from losing them as well. So, long story short, I ended up submitting a a proposal to operate or to start up a casualty support cell in the middle of an entire battalion, so about 600 to 800 troops. And a very long story made really short, somebody saw my vision and said, you know what, that makes sense. And somebody, a much higher authority than me, said, give this guy a shot. And I ended up operating a little office, and I was the conduit between the members and the chain of command and the health services. So mental health, physical health, you name it. And that was really the catalyst for my switch, because at that point, then I was told, listen, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to put your money where your mouth is. You got to go back to school, because you got to, cover our ass, really, for putting you in that position. So then I ended up going back to school, and I took social work because it was a quick ticket to become a therapist within the military system, which ultimately changed. But that's kind of where I started to make my journey into this world. And then I'm no longer in. I haven't been in for about 10 years now. But I specialize in working with the nervous system and trauma work. So I went to the US and I studied a lot of that. And I practice now with the different philosophy of care than perhaps the military or government organizations. So, I teach that internationally now. So I run a lot of webinars and I am a guest on many, within many organizations, to sort of teach the new lens of what trauma and what the impact of stress does on the body. And there's no greater population to work with than first responders and military, because, everybody's, somebody's worst day is every first responder's every day. So it makes a lot of sense to be able to really tap into that pool of knowledge and experience and learn what it means to be human, as strange as it is. Because when we look at first responders and military, we think they're, superhuman. We do things that other people think that they just can't, and which is true, but we're still human. And so we have to pay attention to that condition. And I think that's my whole story of how I went from there to here. And I've never actually really left there, I don't think. I'm just looking at it from a different lens.
I love that. And first, thank you for your service to the Canadian populace. Much appreciated. So, but there's two things you said: connected and human. Those are two things that are very powerful in my mind, that first responders, we need to be a bit more mindful that we are human, that we're not super humans. We're not Superman. We're not Superwoman. We are humans. And I love that aspect of that. Would you say you were kind of an outlier for having that human-sided connection in the military, or was that pretty across the board? Everyone kind of had that mentality or mindset.
Well, it's an interesting question. I have to break it down a little bit further. I think we all were at our core. I think it's from doing so much group trauma work that I do, a lot of it falls around the breakdown from what they desired, what they wanted to do as humans, but couldn't because of the operation, or just couldn't find that the ability to do something to save someone, to help someone in a way that they needed to, because they didn't have capacity there. The job wouldn't let them. So I think really first responders and military, they kind of go into those professions needing to help. And a lot of times too, I mean, lots of studies show that they do so because a lot of times they didn't quite get that themselves when they were young. And so they were like, well, nobody else is going to do this, I'm going to do it. And I certainly felt that myself. And so it serves us really well in those positions until we can't fulfill that in a mission, in a task, in a call. And then suddenly we have that's that moral injury. It's like, wow, I couldn't complete what I set out to do. I couldn't actually do it. So I not only have I failed, but I don't know what to do with myself afterwards. I don't know how to consolidate that with who I am, with my own identity. I got to the place where I'm at right now, interestingly enough, because of some civilians who were therapists who were completely different than other therapists. They happened to be counseling psychologists, actually out of BC, and they had a much different way about them. They weren't cognitive. They weren't like, well, you should be thinking differently. You should be doing X, Y, Z. They were really connecting with, well, how is that impacting you as a person? And can you find that and locate it, and can you name it? And so that was a real challenge for me because I was very mission oriented growing up. So getting that gift from them, my my role modeling after that became, instead of sort of leading from the front as in let's go fight, my leading from the front was let's go feel, and I'll show you how to feel, and then you can join me, and then we'll feel together. And it's been very powerful. It's been a long time that I've been doing it, and I haven't regretted it.
I love it. I love the big smile on your face when you say that, because you can tell it means something to you. So what was it going through that transition, military, becoming a social worker, supporting them, going in the nervous system? Can you think of one massive kind of learning nugget that changed your life through the whole transition period? Like, wow, I see life in a whole different lens now.
It was the fact that I was human, period. And so I really gravitated to the nervous system because the nervous system doesn't lie. We tell ourselves all kinds of things. Other people tell us all kinds of things about who we are, what our expectations are, what we're able to perform, like what we should be able to do, the shoulds. I love the shoulds. But the reality is when you start to look at the mechanics of the nervous system, it doesn't matter what you tell yourself, your nervous system will always be right. Doesn't mean it's where you want to be, but so I was humbled enough to recognize, actually, first of all, it's not me. I'm not all messed up. I have a nervous system that's out of calibration. It's working really well. It's just not calibrated appropriately for the current environment, which is basically where all my work started to come into. And it's 17 years of work into my book, which is an operator's guide to the nervous system, describes in great detail in a fraction of a second what goes on in your entire body. And that knowledge of knowing that it's not you as a person, it's you as the mechanics of you. And when you understand the mechanics of you, that means you have options. And options means that you have agency in how you are in the environment at any given moment.
Very cool. Love it. Definitely resonate with what you're saying here. So when we talked off air, you talked about trauma isn't a thinking problem. You want to expand on that a little bit? Because I totally agree with you 100%.
Yeah. This is a narrative that's been pushed out there for quite some time now. It's very popular. It's a part of the cognitive behavioral therapy framework. And it's really, when you look at cognitive behavioral therapy, lots of people have opinions on it. It's the gold standard for treatment. But there's a lot of things that gets missed in the wash. As you continue to use something for so long and train people on it, you start to lose the nuances and the sort of the makeup of it. In the cognitive behavioral therapy, one thing that's actually starting to miss is the fact that it actually comes from the body first. It's a physiological reaction. So it's the physiology behind the psychology that we need to look at. When we start to look at the psychology first, what we're trying to do is really phenomenal. When you try to convince yourself to do something different, you're trying to convince your physiology that basically don't pay attention to what your nervous system is telling you. It's actually avoid it, shut it down, and try to dismiss it completely. And the nervous system's sole purpose, sole function in life is to overcome. That's it. It has no, I can't finish that sentence because it doesn't matter what it is. If it's cold in here, my nervous system will respond in a way to make me overcome being cold. Everything is like that. And as soon as I try to dismiss it, what it does is it sends a louder signal. It ups the ante because its sole purpose is to keep me alive. If I'm not going to pay attention to it and it's trying to keep me alive, it's got nothing else to do. It's going to make it felt louder and louder. So then we have physiological responses. We have things that we just can't control. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't control the way I'm responding. Suddenly I'm not even in the same room. All of these things are the nervous system working very hard to do its job for us to pay attention to. And so when we pay attention to the nervous system, we're giving it what it's asking for, and we can negotiate it much better. If we take a look at what it's doing, then we can see all the parts that it's responding to, and then we can use reason, and we can placate it because we can say, well, oh, this is what it is. Okay, now that I understand it, I can also recognize that it's not a threat. I'm not going to die from this. And then the nervous system says, great, you heard me. I can calm down a little bit. And so this is why it's not, if you focus just on the head, you're missing all of the signals, and the signals will continue to get stronger. And we see this all the time.
Yeah, my thought around that as well is exactly your point, but also it's pretty hard to go deep in your mind to make solid decisions when your body's in a fight or flight response, when it doesn't feel safe. If it feels
Mhm.
safe, you're going to be so much more open, be able to go deeper into your thoughts, deeper in how you're feeling. But if you're not safe, if your body's not safe, which your nervous system's overreacted, overregulated, then yeah, you're not going to be able to be as open as and make progress in the
Right.
mental capacity, right?
And it's not actually about you as a person not able to, it's actually about your organism itself. So it has to do with the body's energy. And I don't mean energy coming from the stars and coming from whatever. I mean actually glucosamine production energy. That's how our bodies function. And with stress, any kind of stress, even if I was to, speaking with you right now, realize that I have to go to the bathroom, my cognitive capacity has been reduced, that because my body is now shifting the energy distribution in my body to withhold urinating in my chair, to try to maintain focus, to maintain my composure, right? It's shifting, but that also means I have less energy for free thought. So I can't think as clearly. And what's interesting is that we try to force ourselves. Our greatest superpower as humans, which is ridiculous. It's a Mother Nature's dirty trick. I write that in my book, is that our superpower is our ability to think. So we have the ability to think in the past, in the present, and deep, deep into the future. We have the ability to sort of mend these things together, weave them together, and come up with different ideas and solutions. We have all of these things at play that can become our superpower that we rely on so much. But then when we become stressed, the energy, the first place energy we lose it from is our ability to think. So the very thing we rely on the most becomes depleted first in a stressful situation. And this is why, if you think about when you start to talk about a stressful situation, and many folks have talked about this, especially in therapy or trying to tell their story, they start to become activated because their nervous system is seeing what they're thinking about, and that's what it's responding to. It's a sole purpose. And then all of a sudden we start to forget the names, the dates, the places we forget. And suddenly we become more activated. The reason why we're more activated is because our nervous system recognizes we can't overcome not knowing what that person's name is anymore. We can't remember the name of the place. So suddenly we're reacting to a whole lot more of things that our nervous system can't overcome. And that's because we're so focused on our cognition rather than actually what's going on within our own bodies. We pay attention to our bodies and our nervous system, we can then start to organize that much better.
When you were saying that, the last number of years of my career, I couldn't remember people's names of 10 seconds after I met them. My memory was shot. And now that I've, controlled well, not controlled, but I know how to work with my nervous system, my memory, my patience, my capacity, such a change in my life for sure. And then you talk about, needing to go to the washroom right now. And right now I got a pinched nerve in my hip. I got 2 ice packs on my back, one on my thigh, and I know I'm not here 100% unfortunately right now because that pain is just grasping me, right? So same kind of concept, right? So
That's the beautiful part of it, though. You're aware of it.
yes.
You are aware of it. And as soon as you become aware of it, it changes the way that your nervous system sends those signals. Because if you weren't aware of it, then you would start to get irritable. You would start to get frustrated, fed up. You'd be like, okay, when is Doug going to finish talking? I'm going to shut this thing down, right? And not knowing where it's coming from. But when you know where it's coming from, it changes the quality of that stress. And it's like, okay, the nervous system takes a bit of a break. Yeah, it's there. We're still going to maintain this pain level because it lets you know that there's something that needs to be fixed. But we're also going to let you pay attention to Doug and carry on with the podcast. So it's very wonderful how you said that. Yeah,
Love that. So I think once again, when we talked off air, you mentioned getting regulated and that phrase of getting regulated. Want to just touch on that and what that was?
Roll my eyes on that one. It's my
Yes, okay.
somatic response to that. This is the bane of my work. So I really shifted gears to the mainstream a narrative of homeostasis, which is balance, which is like everything has to be in this center space in order to work. And anybody that works in trauma as a therapist understands Dan Siegel's work. I think in 1999, he created the window of tolerance. I use it today. It is a fairly good model to be able to show kind of how our nervous system works. But the problem is people get stuck on, this is where we're supposed to operate. And so if we're supposed to operate here, anything outside of that space is wrong. And that means there's something wrong with us. And I argue that's completely not true. And so the simple analogy for this is, if you are in rush hour traffic, I want your nervous system to be working higher. So I want you to be more activated in rush hour traffic to negotiate the fast moving changes in the road, etc. If you are reading a book on a couch on a Sunday evening, I want your nervous system to be less activated than it is in rush hour traffic, because it's not required. So that is what I call a homeodynamic. So homeodynamics, as opposed to allostasis, is the ability to fluctuate more appropriately for the current environment that you're in, allowing that flexible. And that really started when I was working with a client who I had received from a different clinician. And he said to me, he said, my previous clinician told me that most people go from 0 to 60. And they told me that, but is there something wrong with, because I go from 58 to 60. And I thought that was very interesting. I'm like, that's fascinating. Because then the question is, if he's at 58 and he's cognitively available, so he's able to use reason, he's able to gain insight, he's able to hear other people's perspectives, and he's able to feel. If he's at a 58 when he does that, is his system wrong? Is it working incorrectly? Or does he just have less capacity to go from that cognitive ability, the function ability, to not functioning? And the argument is that, well, it's actually less space capacity. He's actually functioning quite well at high rate, but we just need to build some more capacity for him to be able to withstand and navigate things before he loses capacity.
So let's dive into your nervous system recalibration system. Want to tell us a little bit about kind of what that is? Because I think that's the core of the work you do. And well, I could be wrong, but I'm assuming it's the core of the work you do. So share with the listener today a little bit what that is.
Yeah, so it's like the culmination of 17 years of research and applied research and program development and all these things. And really, it's simply working with nothing else but the nervous system. And nervous system recalibration isn't changing you to make you back into balance or make you regulated. Nervous system recalibration is to be able to calibrate your nervous system so that it's more appropriate for the current environment, which means that you could be elevated or less elevated or what have you, but it's actually more appropriate for where you're at and what you're talking about. And so it uses physiology to do that. And there's 5 key components to nervous system recalibration. One is breathing. And you can see this all the time. We're fascinating. We watch people go through all of these changes, and we may not be able to identify what they are, but we notice when things like this happen. So if you notice people breathing, right, the first thing that usually happens is we stop breathing, or we breathe into the chest, right? These are very indicative of our nervous system change. And that stop breath is really quite interesting. It's braced for impact. Over a long period of time, that can be problematic in itself because you're not breathing. But rhythm is really interesting too. And you'll notice this, especially when you talk to people and their nervous systems they seem fairly coherent, they seem fairly calm. And then they talk about a story, their bodies shift and they start to get rigid, right? So as they start to get rigid, what's happening is they go into sort of a freeze. But when we go into a freeze, our nervous system relates freezing with the inability to move. It lacks options. So we talk about rhythm is, how is our body functioning? Are we able to move? Again, we talk about the superpowers. A rabbit's superpower is its ability to freeze. Have you ever noticed a rabbit when it's caught, when it's seen? It is this. Yep. It's amazing. It does it really well, and it could do that forever. But it's designed to do that. And the reason why it's designed to do that, it's the same way as our system, but it's calibrated a little bit different. It's designed to hold and build energy for the moment when they feel like they can flee. And as soon as they get that opportunity, they capitalize on all this burst of energy, gets pushed forward, rhythm, into this movement, and they escape the wolf. It's amazing. When we do that, the way that our system is calibrated, as soon as we freeze, our nervous system jacks it up a notch. It says, okay, we're frozen. We got to figure out what our objective is. We got to figure out where our exit is. We got to figure out how to get out of this. And the longer we stay in a frozen position, the more activated we become, because it says, in our nervous system saying we are going to die if we stay here. So it has a much different impact on us. Environment. The environment is critical, of course. I mean, we could be having this conversation as we are right now. I'm assuming it's either air conditioned or it's just a nice condition in your space. Same with mine. If we were to have this conversation in the middle of the Arctic right now in a snowstorm, would we be feeling the same way? Would we be responding the same way? Would we have tolerance the same way? No, because our environment is different and it has an impact on what we're doing, regardless if we were going to do the same thing or not. So paying attention to our environment, focusing on different things in our environment, all have an impact. Social engagement. We are social creatures. As mammals, we can survive without socialization. We cannot thrive. We need to be engaged with other people to thrive. Counterpoint to that, I can hear the listeners already. Yeah, but what if we get hurt by the very people? Exactly. So the problem with that is we are so sensitive to being socially engaged that we are also just as equally likely to be injured by social engagement. Hence, moral injury is definitely a social engagement injury. And it's just as important to recalibrate or reintegrate a healthy social engagement as it is to avoid sort of being negatively impacted by social engagement. But are we able to be socially engaged right now? Or are we not? And sometimes making contact with a person, making eye contact. I remember being in combat. Really interesting being in combat is that it can be the most terrifying thing you could ever experience going through, I guess, any kind of firefight. So firefighters and their firefight, mine and my firefight. But what's really interesting is if you look over and you see somebody else doing the exact same thing that you're doing and you make eye contact, suddenly it's like, wow, I'm not alone. This is terrifying, but for some reason, I feel like I can do it. Much different than, for example, if we see something that's terrifying and we see something that's horrific and we need to feel like we need to do something, and we look over and make eye contact with somebody and we say, that's terrible, we need to do something. And that person says, I don't know what you're talking about. Even when I say that to you, my body physiology shifts. It's like, whoa, that's terrifying. Suddenly I can't trust the people I'm with. So social engagement is critically important in how we're able to connect with that in order to navigate our nervous system. And the last one is curiosity. Curiosity is incredibly difficult because it is that brain power, that cognitive discipline to say, am I being curious? Am I looking at this? Am I seeing it in black and white, or am I seeing nuance? Can I be curious about all of these things? And if you're able to go through breathing, rhythm, environment, social engagement, you are being curious. So don't worry about that. You're actually able to achieve it. But maintaining curiosity, here's what I say. You can't fight off a saber-toothed tiger and wonder what the rose smells like at the same time. You can't be in fight or flight and then be curious and playful. So if you can invoke curiosity in any amount, you're on your way to being able to tap in and recalibrate your nervous system to be more appropriate for that environment.
Love it again. Love it again, because for myself, when I became a coach through Royal Roads University, that was one of the underlining messages: be curious, be curious. And one of my favorite shows, and honestly, he's a mentor, but he's an actor, is Ted Lasso. And be curious, not judgmental is his words, right? And since I've been more curious, man, it's changed my life in a big way. It's helped all those other 4 elements for sure. It's helped my connection, my capacity, my listening, my breathing. Everything's changed because of being curious. And I'm glad you brought that up. That was awesome. Cool.
And this is something that's interesting. I work with law enforcement, and I bring up nervous system recalibration in their training. So tactical training with nervous system recalibration. And one of the things that always comes up is somebody says, yeah, but you're going to make me lose my edge. You're going to make me lose my edge because I'm going to be paying attention to how I am, and I'm going to lose that split-second decision-making. And that's actually physiologically impossible because of the way that we respond. We respond to things before our cognition has a chance to actually identify what we're responding to. This is why when you flinch, something comes down from the ceiling and you flinch. You don't actually know what it is, but your body responds to it. Then there's a process of identifying it. Then there's of identifying what it is. There's a process of actually making it, determining what to do with that. So there's many processes that occur I'm never going to take away the edge that you have, that instinctive edge. But what I am going to do with nervous system recalibration is your follow-up actions are going to be more appropriate for the environment, rather than I'm going to go with the script. I'm going to go in blind because I'm in a rage now, and I'm just going to let it have at it. No, we have agency. I don't want to say control. We have agency. We have agency in how we are moving in the environment. It's not foolproof. I'm the first to say that sometimes I lose it because I'm human. But the more I practice this, the more I practice it though, the more likely I am to be able to be more appropriate for the environment and be much healthier to me, for sure.
Going back to the regulate the nervous system, you talked about the traffic and then the Sunday reading a book. In essence, I'm just thinking about, you are regulating in that moment, right? Am I wrong in there? Or in that moment, you're regulating your nervous system to sit on the couch on a Sunday? Or
Yeah,
is it different?
I think it's different. And the reason why, so I look at it from a molecular level. So the biomechanics, there is never, ever, ever two exact identical moments in time. It's completely impossible. Even when you're sitting on the couch reading a book, as you read the book, your physiology is changing by what you're reading. It doesn't mean it's going to change a great deal. It doesn't mean the whole world is going to shift. But being aware of that fluidity, that dynamic fluidity, if you could be aware that you're in constant fluidity, when it comes time to say, wow, I'm really struggling right now, if you have that awareness that is in constant flow, then you will also be aware that, yeah, I need to continue to ride this because it will change. It's changing all the time, and eventually I will move through something. And so I never say there's a static. A static is stuck, period. We're not static. We're very dynamic. Even from the time that we started to talk, our physiology is shifting. Just from our own communicating with each other, connecting with each other, temperature in the room, all of those wonderful things. So I always say it's dynamic. I never say that we're regulated. If we're regulated, then we're fixated on being a certain way. And if we're fixated on being a certain way, anytime that we try to maintain that, if we are forcing the maintenance of that, we're not responding to the nervous system. There's something that we're missing. So just maintain dynamics and being dynamic. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I was just thinking about that while you were talking. I was like, I wonder if that's regulated in the moment, but yeah, I get that. Makes a lot of sense. Regulated.
I'd rather be fluid.
Yeah. 100%.
Think of a mixed martial artist, and I watch them all the time, and I do some jujitsu myself. They're phenomenal. They do all of these things, and I don't even know if they realize it themselves. But if you notice, nobody stands in the ring static. No, okay, I'm going to block when they swing. I'm going to shoot for their takedown at this point. No, they're fluid. They're always moving, and they're fluid. And it's a beautiful thing when you watch it. They have much more capacity. They have much more ability. They have much more agency, all of these.
Like it. So you mentioned briefly Allodynamics. Can you just kind of go into a little bit of that? I'm sure it was a new phrase to myself as well. Even though I love this stuff, it was still a new term to me. So
yeah, Allodynamics is a term that I coined, or that I've capitalized on, I should say. And I say capitalize, I actually did talk to it was originally came up in a paper, Gary Bernstein and John Cacioppo. And John Cacioppo is quite famous now for all his work on loneliness, which was a pretty lonely job for the first 30 years of his career, until they discovered that loneliness was linked to early death rates, early mortality. And now it's become a big thing. So it's kind of where he's famous for. But reading their papers, they talked about the challenges of the homeostatic model. The homeostatic being the balance, like this is where you should always be kind of thing. And so they used the term allodynamic. And so I actually contacted him. I worked with him a little bit. It was amazing. I showed him what I was doing. He thought, man, you're on the right track. Keep going with it, which is really great for me. But it's about continuously having options, flexibility, sort of being a flexible pillar. And so you're always guarding. There's only a few things in our system. If you talk about homeostasis, a few things in our system are homeostatic. Blood pressure, body temperature, those things. And they work on what's called a bifurcation system, where it's like it waits till something is not quite right, and then it kicks into gear to adjust it. And those things are critically important. But there's so many other parts of us, there's so many other things that we're navigating that are not designed that way. we can't design them that way. So the allodynamics really maintains homeostasis while also navigating the energy allocation through allostasis uh, to be able to navigate everything else that we're dealing with in the environment, including our internal functioning as well.
So for the listener right now who's kind of maybe stuck, feeling stuck, and maybe not sure about the health of their nervous system, what would be some key indicators they could kind of do some self check-in, some introspection, and see how their nervous system is doing? Is there any things you could provide the listener today?
Yeah, it sounds silly, but I always go into breathing first. Always check your breathing out. Notice what you're breathing. If you're doing it on your own, look in the mirror. Practice breathing in front of a mirror and see what body part moves. And then as you notice, right, it should be abdominal breathing. It's the only thing that we know that is the actuator between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And that sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight, is that activation response to get up and go. The parasympathetic is actually the rest, recover, and repair. We need to be able to go into rest, recover, and repair. Problem is we often don't because we're not taught to. We're often always in activation. But if you go in front of a mirror and you breathe, and I said, just imagine a balloon tied to the very tip of your tailbone inside your body. And all you're going to do is fill up that balloon as you breathe in, which means that you breathe from the bottom of your seat. And watch in the mirror and see what parts of your body do you move first, and really focus on being able to do that. And then notice your body. Notice what parts of your body are stuck. And what happens when you allow them to move a little bit? What happens if you give them some fluidity? And notice how that changes your physiology. Notice your environment. Be curious about things, like noticing perhaps looking into your own eyes. What do you see? Do you see a youthful you? Do you see memories of you perhaps from before? Do you see perhaps things in you that you hadn't noticed before? Some curiosity just in your own person. And sort of developing that just in front of the mirror, or you could do it with other people as well. But I mean, quite honestly, you can also buy my book. It breaks it all down in really simple terms. It does have a lot of scientific-y talk, but I think I've broken it down in a way that we can understand. It just reframes the way we see psychology from a physiological perspective, and also gives us agency. We are the ones that have the ability to operate our nervous system. We are not beholden to somebody else to make that happen for us. We don't need to go away to a safe space necessarily. We can practice this every day, all of the time, and we'll become stronger and better at it.
Are there any key indicators with like smart tech these days, like wearable rings, watches, that can help a person kind of monitor their nervous system health?
There probably are. It's very interesting. So I'm kind of conflicted. So I'm a biofeedback, neurofeedback technician. So I can work in those fields. I like those things. They have a purpose and but I also think they have a time span for use. And what I mean by that is they're really good for developing a sense of awareness. If you can connect the two, like if I'm looking at this machine, it's telling me this, can I feel it? When I'm looking at that, does that resonate with me as I'm feeling it? And that's what it's good for. If suddenly you don't feel it, but you just rely on the machine to tell you all the information, you're never going to be able to embody the experience, and you're not going to be able to move forward from it. So it's all in the way those things are used. They are really good tools, but you have to be aware that as a human organism, our nature is to be lazy. And if we then become dependent on the machine, we're no further ahead than we were before.
What would be the most critical thing for the listener to learn about the nervous system? Is it what the nervous system is, the parasympathetic, sympathetic, the vagus nerve? Would you say there's one element, like if you could spend 50 minutes and study this, what would you suggest?
You need both. You need both. And right now, the mainstream narrative is have a happy life, live a peaceful life, live stress-free, be safe. All of these key phrases are actually telling us to be one way and one way only. And what they actually do is they activate us, because we are always fighting to be safe. We are always fighting to be in that space. And anytime you're focused on that, you're trying to achieve it, you're in sympathetic activation. The counterpoint to that is, and you may have run into people like this. They stay in their basements. They don't associate with anybody. They don't do anything. And you ask them, hey, how's your day? Great. I didn't see anybody. I didn't do anything. I stayed in my basement. It's perfect. How's your life? That's fine. Just the way I want it. Really? What do you want to do? Well, I like to be able to hang out with people. I like to be able to go be with my kids. I like to go to a movie with my spouse. Oh, well, wait a minute. You just told me that it was good to be this way. And what ends up happening is the longer we stay, we keep ourselves bundled up in this safe cocoon, trying to avoid any stress. The longer we avoid stress, what ends up happening is our bodies go into an atrophy. We actually become weaker for it. We need stress in order to build what's called resiliency, in order to build capacity. So we need to actually, there's such a thing called eustress. Rarely do we ever hear it. We've heard it. Many people have not heard eustress. All we've heard is de-stress. And all the narratives are about de-stress. Stress is bad. Avoid stress. And the more we avoid stress, the more stressful we'll become because we go into atrophy. We haven't exercised the muscles to go into rest, recovery, repair. And if you want to look at this, look at it from a muscular perspective. When you lift weights, you do not gain strength when you're lifting the weight. You strain the muscles, you stress the muscles out, you put the weight down, parasympathetic, you want abdominal breathing, and you have less energy than you had when you first lifted the weight. Suddenly, over time, you start to get that energy again. That is parasympathetic activation. That is rest, recovery, and repair. And then when you lift the weight, I know it's not quite this way, but you can lift more weights. That is growth. Our system, the nervous system works exactly the same way. So we have to be able to exercise some stress and then exercise recovery, really exercise recovery if we actually want to be well. So it is both are needed, but you have to be able to use them appropriately. Quite often we don't use rest, recovery, repair. We're trained in activation. Firefighters, paramedics, law enforcement, military, we're trained on, you're going to be the one to run towards the fire, period. You're going to be the one to be active, you have to stay on. We don't know how to come down, especially when you're working 12-hour shifts, 14-hour shifts, and you're driving through the same community that you just resuscitated somebody who overdosed, saved a child from being molested. You're driving through that area to go back home to try to become mom and dad, only to know that 8 hours later, you're going to put that uniform on, go to that same community, but in a much different way. And so often what happens is we just say, it's too difficult to go to the rest, recovery, repair. I'll take the uniform off, but I'm really going to keep it on. It's just easier that way. But then what ends up happening is we lose all of our energy. We don't have capacity to maintain that. We haven't recovered. And because we haven't recovered, we become injured.
Yeah, I was definitely in that boat where I just left my armor on all the time, right? But I never thought of it about it being easier for me to just leave it on versus taking it off. I just left it on, and I thought that was what I had to do. I didn't really understand that. So when you say that, that's a neat way to frame it. It boggles my mind that we don't teach this to high school, fire school, police academies. Like I know it's starting there, but it's like, wow, this is pretty basic human action. The nervous system. Right? Yeah.
You have to actually break through the psychological mainstream narrative of it, right? So they've memorized package of it, but what they've forgotten was psychology actually came from physiologists in the 1800s, discovering how this cellular composition shifts when we go through experiences. And so it's a really hard sell to be able to go back and say, actually, this is our physiology. And there are actual ways that we can work with our physiology on our own power. It's a hard sell. This is what I do with the Atlantic Group and Trauma Training Center is, hey, listen, I'll show you what all these things, we will actually work together and I'll show you how it feels and you'll embody it, not just know it in your head. Because the things that we know in our head, when it comes to crunch time, when we need them the most, they're gone. Because why? The first thing we lose is our cognition. But if you embody it, if you actually practice and train it, as soon as something happens, it's there. It just like, there it is, right? So you've practiced breathing, and you may have noticed it yourself. You've done a lot of the coaching and breathing. As soon as your breathing changes because of something that's happened in the environment, you know, oh shit, my breath just changed. I developed that awareness of what's going on in my body. What's that signal my nervous system's telling me, and is it appropriate?
And once again, nobody ever taught me how to breathe. Nobody
Mm.
ever taught me how to breathe. Like,
Mm.
how do you go through life and such a basic function?
It was hilarious. The first thing that we did was we worked on breathing, because I watched this paramedic and they did not breathe the entire time they were with me. And so we just started to breathe. And once they got the knack of the breathing, he called me a couple of expletives lovingly. And he says, "This is exactly what I do when I'm a paramedic and I'm with a patient that we're going to see in an emergency." I'm like, "Hey, just breathe. You notice it." And I hadn't even thought of it myself. I've never done it myself. And right, he always felt kind of silly, but he also felt sort of rejuvenated and like reborn. It's like, oh, this incredible thing, we're breathing. It's like, yeah, it's if you embrace it, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I talk about it in my book is like, I didn't learn how to breathe until 2020. And I was like, wow,
Mhm.
that's incredible that only 5 years ago is really when I learned how to breathe, right? So,
Yeah,
because I was
it's
very high
true.
in the chest, definitely no belly breathing. I held my breath a lot, and that was all. I didn't even notice it or anything, right? So, yeah, it's a big part of my life now, breathing exercises. In fact, I did
Yeah.
breathing exercise just before we jumped on here. So, just you know, recalibrate my nervous system.
Nice. That's right. Yeah, that's awesome.
So, is there a question that I have not asked you that you wish I asked you?
Mm. I don't think so. We did cover a lot. I mean, there's so much more we can cover too. I mean, you can talk about this stuff forever because a lot of it's uh, a lot of it is sort of packaged in a way that sort of takes us away from the biophysiology. I think I think the last thing I want to sort of end with to make sure we is to sort of shift the narrative from prevention. So we're often in this prevention model, and my campaign is against a prevention model, especially in a first responder community. If you're working in a prevention model in a community that their sole purpose is to go into things that shouldn't have happened in the first place, then you've already failed. There's no way you can't be impacted by the things that you're going into when they're somebody's worst day of your everyday, period. So it's not a prevention model that we want to look at. As soon as we do that, we've already set ourselves up for failure. It's a preparation model. It's being realistic with how our bodies function, being realistic with how we are as humans, and how we're impacted by things, and being prepared for that. Being prepared for it and being self-aware of what our nervous system is doing, being prepared for it and being aware of connection and communication. How are we able to communicate to someone how we feel? Are we able to communicate to ourselves how we feel? Do we have that language? And how do we express what's going on for us? Is it actually getting us where we need to go? Is it getting us support, or is it causing more problems? So that's the preparation. You are going to be impacted by your work. So actually, part of your weaponry in your toolbox is knowing how to navigate those things, not putting the helmet on and soldiering on through it and saying, I'm just going to be as tough as I possibly can and push through like a bull in a china shop. No, no, no. Actually, your greatest superpower can actually be your own self-awareness and your own biomechanics.
That makes me think about the shift in, especially the fire service, but maybe other agencies as well, where we're kind of being a little bit more honest about what you will experience, what you will see going through your career as a volunteer or a career in the fire service. Before, we used to just sell the sexy stuff. You're going to be fighting fire, rescuing babies, and never talked about the trauma side of things, never talked about the moral injury side of things. And I've seen a shift in the last couple of years of like, let's be honest with them. It doesn't mean you're going to get PTSD, PTSI. It doesn't mean that. It means you're gonna see some stuff you might not be ready for, and we're going to give you the tools and prepare you for that, right? So that kind of syncs with
Yeah.
that shift I've been seeing as well. Cool.
Yeah, I've noticed it as well. There's a bit of a shift there for sure. It's a shift that they don't quite know where they're going yet. They know that they want to do something different, but then the danger is that the shift goes so far that it's now sort of fear mongering and everything. You will get PTSD because, as you said, you don't have to. You have to sort of find that balancing point of it's normalizing the fact that you're going to be impacted more than others will because you're in that kind of occupation, but it's also your responsibility to pay attention to that and to work with that as you go through it.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
So for the listener right now who wants to maybe contact you or get your book, find out more about your services, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can get a hold of me through info@agttc.org. Thank to the email for my group, the Trauma Training Center. Also on there, you can actually order the book directly from there, or you can get the book through Amazon and Barnes and Noble and a few others as well. So, but I am quite approachable. I do this because I have a passion for people that serve. It's ingrained in me. The only people that I have found that are impacted, quite honestly, in all of my research, the only people that are impacted by this work are people that care. And there's nobody that I want to work with more than people that care. So this is why I do what I do.
Love it. Thank you so much. I want to finish off with a little nugget of what you do for your own nervous system care on a regular basis. What would be your go-to way to nourish it?
I practice my nervous system recalibration. Quite honestly, I sit here and I just go through my breathing. What is my breathing doing right now? Rhythm. Is my body, am I rigid? Am I fluid? Environment. Am I noticing other parts of my environment? Social engagement. Am I being engaged? Do I want to be engaged? Or what have you? And curiosity. Am I remaining curious? And I cycle through that all of the time. And that keeps me well.
Yeah. What's your go-to breathing exercise, or do you have one?
I keep really basic. So I just do some people call it the box breathing, which is basically what I do. Is just I have a friend of mine who's also a therapist. He's into the Wim Hof stuff. And every once in a while we'll do a group together and he'll say, I'm going to do this kind of breathing thing for the group. And I'm like, holy, and he's doing all kinds of different things. You want to get your body temperature up in your left toenail. Let's do this breathing exercise. It's incredible. But I keep it pretty basic, but it's also being curious, be playful. You can look at that stuff and find different things to do for sure.
Love it. All right. Final message. Anything that's burning in your mind right now you want to share?
Have the opportunity to support and serve each other when others do no longer have that opportunity. And I say that because I've lost people in combat. And when I'm at my worst, when I think, I don't know why I'm doing this, I don't feel like I can do anything. Honestly, I see their faces and I see them scoffing and laughing at me saying, look, we can't do that because we're not there. You can, don't waste it. And I cherish and I love them for it. And it keeps me alive today and it keeps me motivated.
Powerful. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for your service as well. And thanks for your continued service into this field of nervous system health for first responders and military. So I think that's a critical part of our wellness for sure. So thank you very much for sharing that. To the listener, I hope you got some nuggets out of this for your own nervous system recalibration, maybe some of those nuggets of those top 5 and the recalibration system. And just maybe check in with that mirror and look at yourself today and see how your eyes are looking at yourself and your breathing. I like that. That's a good kind of practice to get into. So until next time, stay well. All right, that's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.